All right, we're on to the scope statement. The requirement here is that we have to determine the boundaries and applicability of the quality management system to establish its scope. So the scope is basically what business you're in. Try not to overthink this. And it says the organization shall apply all the requirements of the standard if they're applicable within the determined scope of the quality management system. It also says that you have to maintain this as documented information. You have to put it in writing. The scope shall state the types of products and services covered. That's basically what business you're in, and provide justification if you think that some of the clauses of the standard aren't applicable to you. And this is the kind of thing that happens occasionally. I have a couple of clients that actually don't have any measuring devices, and so what they'll do is exclude the measuring devices as requirements. If you scan this QR code, it'll take you to an entertaining video on this topic. There's a link down below. There are a couple of warnings on this. First of all, the auditor is required to check the activities you claim in the scope. There's a funny story later on this topic. Are you really in the business you say you're in? Secondly, clauses that are deemed not applicable have got to have documentation. And then finally, you probably already have a scope statement that defines some exclusions, and it's up to the auditor to check all of this. I was once assigned to do a stage 1 and stage 2 audit down in the Florida Panhandle, and after a long drive late at night, I got up the following morning and looked for the place. I eventually found a building, and it was a big metal shed with no address and a rusty metal door. So I like to start at 8, and I went inside carefully. And the place had a collection of old metalworking equipment, a couple of lathes, a big saw, and some other stuff under tarps. So a fellow arose from the clutter in the back and introduced himself. "Hey, do you want some venison?" he offered. He opened the lid of a bloody Coleman cooler to reveal a deer leg. "Yeah, I've been sleeping here. I got me a deer last night," he explained. The boss rolled in a few minutes later. The company, such as it was going to start to produce metal products for the offshore drilling industry. They were going to use customer drawings and do custom machining, and that was going to be their scope. "Great," I said. "Can you give me objective evidence of your ability to do the scope?" They were a bit confused by that question. I went on to explain that in order for me, the auditor, to get them to the stage 2 audit, they'd need to prove somehow their ability to do the activities of the scope, which in their case was make a metal part at some level that was acceptable to the customer. So the technical issue they were facing was the fact that they'd never made any of these that had been accepted by a customer. They'd never made anything, in fact, other than a few custom designed wood signs for the front of people's businesses down there. The rules for proving the scope vary by the registrar, by the way. One of the registrars I worked for required 90 days worth of production data to prove the scope. All I wanted was one, and all I would have settled for was a prototype that was done for free. I needed some shred of evidence that they were capable of producing these things to close enough tolerance that the customer would accept them.